Charting Toward Intimacy covers mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Do you have a habit of saying no? And this is a sex and intimacy podcast, so I'm talking about when your husband initiates. Do you have a habit of saying no? Let's talk about it. Welcome to Charting Toward Intimacy, the sex and intimacy podcast for Catholic women. My name is Ellen Holloway, and I am on a mission to help you actually enjoy and desire good, holy sex with your husband. And today, we're going to be talking about habits a little bit, but specifically when we get into a habit of always saying no to our husband's initiation of sex. And this is something that I realized about maybe 2 years ago, that I was in a habit of saying no. I thought, and I told myself in my brain that I was saying no because I didn't really feel like having sex. And while that was generally true, just because I didn't really feel like having sex wasn't necessarily a good reason to say no to a perfectly genuine and open and desired initiation of sex from my husband. I was simply habitually saying no. And this was actually really hard to realize in myself. I mean, 2 years ago, if you've been following the podcast for any amount of time, I was well into the podcast at this point. I had thought that I had a lot of things figured out and I had healed a lot of issues with sex that I had. But then when I really looked at how often I was actually ever saying yes to my husband, it was rare.
We'll be back with the episode in just a minute. Let me ask you a quick question. Does sex just kind of suck? Or maybe you and your husband are just always arguing about sex? Maybe you feel like your libido has disappeared, or it takes you too long to get aroused, or you just really don't like sex that much and you're ready for that to not be an issue in your life anymore. If that sounds like you, then you need the Catholic Sex Course for Women. In this course, we dive into the 5 pillars of married sex, and I help you actually finally have the sex life that you have dreamed of. Sex is so good. It is so holy, and you deserve to actually enjoy and find pleasure in your sex life. Check out the Catholic Sex Course for Women at vinesandfullbloom.com/Catholic sex, or click the link in the show notes.
And that was kind of an indicator something might be off here. Now, I am not saying that you always have to say yes to your husband initiating sex. I have never said that on this podcast, and I never will. But I want you to just think back. Think back to the last 5 times that your husband initiated sex. How many of those times did you say yes? And if it's less than 3 of those 5 times, you might have a habit of saying no. And we like to hide that habit behind a bunch of reasons, right? A bunch of excuses, really. I was really tired today. I just didn't have the energy. I'm completely touched out. I need to get XYZ done. I've got too much on my mind right now. We need to finish the chores. We need to plan this. We need to talk about this. We don't have time for sex. Now, in certain situations, those reasons might genuinely be good reasons. But this is my challenge for you, is I want you to maybe even sit down with a pen and paper and think through those reasons. And are they really reasons that it's not possible for you to have sex right now and enter into an incredibly unifying act with your spouse and open up to him and love him and give glory to God by coming together in this way? Are those reasons really what is stopping you from saying yes? Or are you just used to saying no? We have to be able to grow and learn. And a lot of times we don't want to. I didn't want to. It actually took months of this like little, I don't know, kind of prick in the back of my head of like, hey, why did you really say no? Why did you really say no? It took months of that for me to realize that I was just saying no out of habit. I was just using the same excuses that I always did. I'm touched out. Well, of course I'm touched out. I'm a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids. I'm being touched constantly. How about instead of just sitting back on this I'm touched out excuse, how about I figure out how to calm my nervous system down and actually receive the loving touch of my husband? That's a lot harder to do than just saying, I'm touched out. Can't do it. And again, I'm not saying you always have to say yes. And I'm not saying that being touched out isn't a real reason to say no to sex. But there is a difference between actually needing to say no for a valid reason and just saying no out of habit and using one of the kind of regular reasons why we want to say no. So this is going to take some personal reflection. And I really do. I want you to grab a pen and paper sometime in the next couple of days and just sit down and journal it out a little bit and just think about what are your reasons for saying no? And, do you have to be saying no? Thanks so much for listening. If you are not already following us on Instagram, be sure to check us out at Charting Toward Intimacy. And if you listen to podcasts on a platform that gives you the option to rate or review, we'd love for you to do that because it helps us spread the word about the podcast. If you ever have questions, comments, or episode topic ideas, please reach out to us. We love to hear from you. You can reach out on Instagram or send us an email. Our email is in the show notes. Until next time.